What is up, guys? It is the first week of June and the wind is blowing about 35 miles an hour right now, so we're off the water a little bit early today, but thought I'd run out here, shoot a quick video for you because this information is going to be pertinent to right now, and it's going to be good for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And you know, the conditions haven't been perfect for it yet, but I've already started catching fish on this bait, and I've been catching them for probably about a week now. So use this information that I'm about to drop and catch fish on Lake St. Clair right now. And one of my favorite times of the year is about to happen. I've seen one mayfly so far this year, but we're about to get our hatch. And if you've never experienced a mayfly hatch on Lake St. Clair, they are everywhere. And so people get intimidated fishing this time of year. They think, you know, the fish aren't eating that good because they are so keyed in on those mayflies. Well, I'm about to give you the rundown on how to put all the odds in your favor and catch them on this technique that pretty much mimics a mayfly. And I mean, it could mimic a little fish or a leech or several different things, but for whatever reason around the mayfly hatch, this bait has been very, very good for me. And we are talking about the hair jig. And this is a Marabou jig by Northland Tackle, and primarily I am fishing the 1/8 ounce. When the conditions are absolutely still calm, I'll go down to the 3/32, or if I don't need to make a super long cast because the fish are so keyed in on mayflies and they're eating them around the boat, then I'll go down to the 3/32. But the name of the game with the hair jig is casting it as far as possible, getting it away from the boat when you're blind casting. Now, if you're seeing them kind of slurp the flies on the surface, then you're going to need to make an accurate cast, get it as close as possible. And if they're far away, you're going to want as heavy as one as possible. If they're really close to the boat, then you can get them with that 3/32. But those are the two primary sizes that I use out here on Lake St. Clair. And it's just an absolutely great way to catch them. So I am going to run down the line, reel, rod, and a couple little tips and tricks that I use to catch a pile of smallmouth right now on Lake St. Clair. All right, so we're actually going to start with the bait. And for the hair jig, I catch them on the brown, the black, and the black and purple. I've caught a lot of fish on all 3 colors. You just kind of have to let the fish tell you what they want. If you're fishing one color and you're seeing fish follow back to the boat and not eating it, you need to switch colors. A lot of times, like if you're throwing that brown one around the flies, they're not eating it, you switch to black, boom, they start eating it. Or you switch to black and purple, and bang, I mean, they start biting. So you got to let the fish tell you what they want. I mean, we're bass fishermen. We have a lot of colors. We all have our go-to colors, but we've always got another color for backup. So just kind of one of those things. Need to keep a couple different colors in your box and let the fish tell you what they want. But this is a brown 1/8 ounce Marabou jig. And this is what it looks like when you tie it up. So what you're going to want to do when you go to fish this is before you cast it, you're going to want to dip this in the water and get it nice and compact. So it's not going to be all fluffy like this when you're fishing it. It's going to be more streamlined, and it's going to cast a lot better when you have those feathers wet. So get those feathers wet. I've even had them like just set them on the water and they float. So you need to kind of dip them down, put them right up your rod tip, get them wet, and compact those marabou feathers, and that way you can cast it a lot further. And I didn't come up with this. I've seen it on a lot of videos. If you've watched hair jig videos in the past, I'm sure you already know this. But for some people, maybe you haven't seen it. There's another thing you can do to add a little bit of weight to this, and that is putting a little piece of plastic on the shank of your hook. So you can see there, that is a Yamamoto Senko, and it's probably about as long as my thumbnail. I take either end of the Senko, cut it off with a pair of pliers after I'm done using the Senko, and that's what I'm gonna just thread it up on the shank of the hook. And it doesn't really impact like how it swims. It doesn't impact if I get bites or not. It's just there to add weight to the jig. And those feathers are gonna, I mean, they're gonna be compact around it. You're not even gonna see it. After you catch a few fish on it, they pull a few feathers out of the jig, then you might be able to see it. But I mean, I've caught them where you can see it outright and doesn't have any impact as far as the fish go. So that is just one little tip to increase your odds, get it away from the boat and cast it just a little bit further. Just add a little chunk of plastic, and the Senko is probably my go-to for that because they're nice and dense. They're just the right profile. That's my favorite thing to put on there. All right, so I'm gonna now go over the rod that I use, and I'm gonna give you two different options. So the rod that I'm gonna use while I'm guiding is a little bit more budget friendly, and then the rod that I'm gonna use for my personal like stash, I guess you could call it, is a little bit higher end. So I'll go over, and they're both really good rods. They both will suffice for this technique, and it's just kind of one of those things with what your budget is. So let's get into that. So the first rod that I'm going to use, this is what I'm going to use guiding. This is a 7'3" medium light extra fast Victory by St. Croix, and I've got just a 2500 series 7 reel GF series and spooled up with 10-pound Seaguar Smackdown braid. So this is kind of the setup that I use guiding with the Marabou jig. So this rod it's not as long as what a lot of guys think they need for a hair jig. And don't get me wrong, a little bit longer rod does help a lot. But with this 7'3" medium light extra fast, the tip is really whippy on it. So that really helps you cast this thing as far as you need to cast it. If it was a little bit stiffer, then I would say you definitely need a longer rod. But as buggy whippy as the 7'3" medium light extra fast is in the Victory lineup, it works really, really well for throwing a hair jig. And I haven't had very many problems with getting it out away from the boat. I've had a lot of clients catch a lot of fish on this setup here. And I typically use a 2500 series reel just because that's gonna kind of cut down on weight. I have problems with my elbow and casting, and this thing's like casting a wiffle ball. I mean, you have to really whip it to get it out there. It's not one of those things you can just lob like a jig or a tube or something like that. It's a little bit heavier. I mean, you have to really whip it, and having those buggy whip rods helps a lot. And I just don't want to have a heavier reel on a longer rod because it's heavy. So I'm fishing it all day. I don't like having that elbow fatigue, so that's why I go to a 2500 series reel instead of that 3 or 4000. And I mean, if you're only fishing for a couple hours a day and you want to, absolutely maximize your opportunities, you can put a 4000 series reel on this setup, and you will be able to cast it a little bit further than a smaller one. But for me, 2500 series works just fine. Like I said, Victory and the GF Series 7 reel. Caught a lot of fish on this one, but it's, a little bit more budget friendly. Still really, really nice rods. One thing I want to touch on real quick, when you're picking out a rod, you want to pick out a rod that feels good to you, feels good in your hands, and you're confident in. So don't kind of just take all the recommendations you get from everyone with a kind of a grain of salt, and then you need to feel them out for yourself, and whatever one feels good to you, that's the one you should buy. I wouldn't really kind of let anybody plant seeds into your mind that you have to have this certain rod for a certain technique. There's definitely a lot of different rods out there that will get things done just fine, but you need to pick out a rod you like. Confidence is key. If you have confidence in your equipment, you're going to fish 10 times better than if you kind of in the back of your mind think, I don't know, this doesn't really feel that good to me. So make sure when you're picking out a rod, you are very, very comfortable with it, you like it, and that's the rod for you. I'm just going to give you some suggestions, what I use, what I like. I fished a lot of different rods over the years, and I've settled in on these ones, and these are the ones that I like. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at pick out your next rod. All right, so in the personal stash, the rod I am using is a Physyx 7'10" medium light extra fast by St. Croix. I've been very, very impressed with this rod. I mean, it's got the trigon handle. It's a little bit different. I was kind of skeptical at first, but I really like it. It's really ergonomically fit in your hand. It's a good rod, and I really like this little knob right here, especially with the hair jig. Not necessarily kind of those heavier baits and everything, but with the hair jig, I can really use my offhand and grip that, and I notice a difference in being able to cast. It's more comfortable. I can throw it further, and it just takes a little bit of fatigue off the elbow. It's really, really thought out. It's in a perfect place. It's a pretty sweet rod. So this is, I mean, a little bit on the higher spectrum of rods out there. But I just got it this year. I fished it quite a bit in the last 7 to 10 days. Caught a lot of fish on it already. I really, really like this 7'10" medium light extra fast Physyx by St. Croix rods. This is my kind of go-to. Again, I'm using 2500 series reel, and I have some Seaguar PEX8 braid, and I am throwing that super thin stuff. And that thin braid, don't get me wrong, the Smackdown 10 pound is very, very thin as well. That PEX8 is just a little bit thinner, so I'm using that in kind of the thinnest stuff I can get. So, and I am tying an FG knot from my leader to my braided line. So one thing, I typically I'm using 8 pound leader when I'm fishing the hair jig, but there are times I will go up to 10 pound. And when I'm going to be doing that is when they are actively feeding on mayflies on the surface. I want to keep that jig up, but maybe the wind's blowing a little bit and I need that 1/8 ounce to cast further. I'm going to go up to a 10 pound because the diameter on it is thicker, and the braid is still going to allow me to make a super long cast, but that thicker diameter in my fluorocarbon is going to sink slower than the 8 pound. So I will be able to keep it up on the surface a little bit better than using a thinner diameter, lighter line. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I mean, if I need to, like, I can go all the way up to a 12 pound leader. And what I'm going to be doing is just not tying as long of a leader as I necessarily would with a smaller diameter line. Just so I can make sure I still am able to make a long cast. But that is one way to manipulate your lures, is using a little bit heavier or larger diameter fluorocarbon leader, and that will keep your bait up off the bottom. Like I said, you don't want to touch bottom with it. Some of these rocks have already got moss on them, and you don't want that moss to be on your jig. First of all, the moss is kind of hard to get out of that marabou. And second of all, when you get fouled up with kind of a really slow retrieve, you're kind of wasting that whole cast sequence because they're not going to bite it with that moss on there. So one other tip, kind of use that to your advantage if you need it. But 8 pound is as low as I'm going to go. I'm not going to go down to 6 pound. That's too light in my opinion, and it's just not needed out here on Lake St. Clair. Now, don't get me wrong, there's places in the country where you need to drop down to 6 pound, but Lake St. Clair in June is definitely not one of those places. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, guys, wrapping it up here. We talked about the Marabou Jig from Northland Tackle. These are in stock at Sportsman's Direct. If you're here in town, you need to pick some up. They are on the shelves, 16 and Jefferson up there by the Metro Park. Stop in there, get yourself some Northland Tackle Marabou Jigs. He's got all the good colors. While you're in there, grab a pack of Senkos to throw a little bit extra weight on there. If you're looking to get out on the water with me, I am booked all the way through to the last week of July. I have a couple days available then. And then I have quite a few days left in August. But June is full, jam-packed. We are hitting it hard every day out there. Fish are biting. Finally, we have some weather that's warm. It's been a very, very trying spring. A lot of fronts, a lot of cold fronts, cold water, and it's been a tough one out there. And I'm sure a lot of you guys from out of town have kind of noticed, like, it hasn't been what it was in the past. And the weather has just been absolutely atrocious. So we finally got some good weather here. Smallmouth are biting. We're catching some fish finally, and it's looking like it's going to be pretty good here for the next few weeks anyways. Stable weather, warm temperatures. Those mayflies are going to pop any day now. Keep your eye out for those mayflies. Keep your eye out for those slurpers, and get after it. Have fun out on Lake St. Clair. Thank you very much. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. We will see you on the next one. If there's anything you guys want me to highlight, kind of go over and do a video on, give you a breakdown, rod, reel, line that I use, a couple little tidbits to help you out, just drop it down in the comments. I'm more than happy to help you guys out. We're here to catch more fish, have fun on the water, and get after it. So thank you very much. We'll see you again soon.